All right, guys, so we're going to continue on working on our isometric shapes here. Now we're going to start doing some round shapes. So round shapes are kind of interesting because they involve the use of what we call the SSR method, the scale, shear, and rotate method. So let's go ahead and open up our isometric grid. You should see that iso-grid somewhere in your open recent files or on your desktop somewhere if it requires you to put in a password. I can give you a hand with that. Anyways, so we have this little isometric grid here. Once again, let's double check a couple things here. I'm going to go over to View. I'm going to go to Guides. I'm going to make sure that Lock Guides. You should see, if you see Lock Guides here, click on Lock Guides. Make sure that when you select stuff, it's not going to select the guides here. And then we're also going to make sure under View that Snap to Pixel is unchecked. Make sure Snap to Pixel, but Snap to Point should be checked. Okay, so let's create some isometric circles here, some isometric sort of circle shapes. So let's grab our ellipse tool, or L on the keyboard here. I'm going to hold down Shift and just draw a circle. Hold down Shift and drag and create this little circle here. That's going to make that. I'm going to go ahead and fill it with something, just any old thing. I'll just fill it with, like, I don't know, blue. And what we'll do here is we'll get our selection tool, V on the keyboard, right-click on it, and then choose Transform and Scale. So we're going to scale it in a non-uniform way, and we're going to scale it to this specific value here, 86.602%. It has to be that specific thing or it's not going to quite fit. So let's press OK, and it should just now be a little bit squatter. Okay, let's right-click on it again, and let's go to Transform, and this time let's press Shear. Shear means we're going to kind of like, not really bend it, but we're going to kind of like move the top one direction and move the bottom a different direction. And it's going to do something funky to it as soon as you press Shear here. We want to make sure that we're choosing a shear angle of negative 30 degrees on the horizontal axis. So press OK. And then finally, we're going to right-click on it, and we're going to Transform and press Rotate, and we're going to rotate it 30 degrees. So now we have it sort of sitting here as if it's the top of a little cylinder that's sort of sitting on its flat side. So I'm going to zoom in some, and I'm just going to make sure that this is seated somewhere, within this grid, sort of like right there. That's fine. Then I'm going to hold down Shift and Alt, and I'm just going to expand it out to where it's going to meet the edges. So the edges are going to meet along the grid itself. So it should be centered right along. You can kind of nudge that here or there, getting real close to just double check to see it's there. That's good. And here we go. So let's take a look at this. What we're going to do is we're going to Alt drag this down. Hold down Shift while you drag it, and it should just be right in line with this. If it fell out of line, obviously you can you can align these up. But what we'll do here is we're going to get our rectangle tool now, M on the keyboard, and we're going to see if we can get as close as possible to the edge here. And this is going a little bit over the thing. It'll be okay. We'll just make this little rectangle, and we're going to fill it up from like the middle here all the way down to the middle of this rectangle on the bottom. So we've got this little shape kind of hanging out here. So I'm going to select these two, this rectangle and the shape on the bottom here. Let's double check that this is centered. Okay, that's good. And we'll just select both of these, use our Pathfinder tool to unite, and then I'm going to grab this one on the top. I'm going to right-click on it. I'm going to go to Arrange and say Bring to Front. Okay, so we've got this shape here, Control and semicolon. We can kind of see we've got this little cylinder looking in here. But I want to make sure that we have that same level of dark and light. So we're going the same thing we did with the square here. So the way we're going to do that is we're going to apply a gradient to the fill here. So let's go over here to fill, and we're going to click on this little black and white swatch here, white-black gradient. Click on that, and click on gradient options. With gradient options, we're immediately given this little kind of window, this little panel here that's going to show us a series of options we've got for as far as the type goes and as far as the various other little things go. I'm going to choose this first color stop and just double-click on it. And I'm going to choose, say, for instance, that same blue color. and then I'm going to go over here to this other stop, right click, double click on it, and I'll choose like a darker blue right here. And so it's going to go from like sort of light blue to dark blue. And if you want to, you could, let's go back over here, and I'm going to make sure this top color is a little bit lighter than all those other colors. So I'm going to click on my little color mixer, and I'm going to choose my HSB, and I'll just pull up the brightness. Maybe I'll pull down on the saturation as well here. So now when we get rid of our grid and we get rid of our strokes, so I'll click on this little stroke swatch here and just hit this little red line, we can see we've got this little cylinder just kind of chilling there. So that's kind of fun. I'm going to group that together. Actually, no, what I'll do, I'll just alt drag this off to the side for now. And what we'll do is we will, actually, you know, we'll just duplicate the whole thing. Alt drag the whole thing over. I'll just move this to the side here and turn the grid back on. All right, so let's getting real close here to this little bit. And I'm going to make, we're going to do a similar thing we did yesterday where we created like sort of a compound path. So we create this compound path of this cylinder here by kind of making a little sort of a donut shape almost. Not quite the same roundness of a donut, but you'll get the idea as soon as we kind of get started here. First I'm going to do is I'm going to grab my little bottom of my cylinder, and I'm going to hit A on the keyboard to get my direct select tool. Just one by one, hold down Shift. I'm just going to grab these 2 points up here, hold down Shift and select both points, and just drag those straight down. Hold down Shift while you drag them until they get to, say, for instance, like, you know, 1, 2, maybe 3 diamond lengths above. And then I'll just drag this straight down, hold down Shift while I do it, and then center it right on top of that. All right, that looks good. I might even make this a little bit smaller here. On the keyboard, make it 2 lengths. Right, like that. There you go. And then just V on the keyboard, drag this down, center it there. All right, good. Okay, so let's. We're gonna have to do some intensive shape building here to create this little effect. It's a little bit easier with the square as it is with the circle here. So let's go ahead and duplicate this. So I'm going to Control C, Control F. I'm going to change this to a different color, say for instance red. And I'm just going to hold down my Shift and Alt with my selection tool activated here. I'm just going to pull it down just to maybe like 1, maybe 2 diamond lengths, like that. Okay, so we've got, this is where we're going to punch this out through our through the ring here. Now the problem with this is that we've got 2 shapes we need to punch through. We need to punch through both this shape, this upper shape right here, and we also need to punch through this lower shape. So we're going to need at least 2 copies of this. But I'm going to want to have a couple more copies just for the sake of further shape building here. So let's go ahead and Control C, Control F one more time, and I'm going to change this color to, say for instance, green, and I'll just hold down Shift while I drag it straight down here. So let's drag it straight down, and let's see if we can't maybe drag it down 1, maybe 2 diamond lengths here, because we want it to be the same thickness as the base. So we want this base and then this up here to be about the same. Okay, so what we'll do here is we're going to click on both of these, and we're going to Control C, Control F, and we're going to go over here to our Pathfinder tool, and hopefully this will work, hit intersect. There we go, and so now I'm going to change this shape here to, say for instance, yellow. So now we have this shape hanging out right here. I'm going to take this guy, and I'm going to, let's think here. Let's do this one moment. Let's grab this red shape here. Let's Control C, Control F, and let's hold down our Shift key and grab our top shape here and just subtract. So now we've got this little donut shape hanging out here. Let's grab this shape here. Let's once again Control C, Control F, and then hold down Shift and grab this bottom shape here, and we'll just sort of punch that out. So now this has a big hole in it as well. I'm going to go ahead and delete my green shape, and I'm going to grab my yellow shape and my red shape, and I'll use the subtract tool there. So now we've got the sort of inner workings, the inner wall of this ring. And I'm just going to grab my eyedropper tool and sample the outer edge of this ring. So now, when I get rid of my stroke, you can kind of see we've got this little sort of ring shape, a little donut on an isometric plane. All right, last thing we'll do is we're going to create a little tree here. Or the tree, or rather, well, we can create a tree here, but we don't really need to. What I'll do is I'll just grab this guy, and I'll just sort of alt-drag him over here, and I'm just going to make him really thin by doing, with my direct select tool, A on the keyboard, and just sort of swiping across the top of this, and then just dragging this straight up here. 1 second. Select all this, and drag this straight up, and I'll just change this to a different color, say light brown and dark brown. Dark brown, that's good. I'll move this down here. And I want to create sort of a tree shape, but it's going to be, once again, kind of a, I wouldn't necessarily say call a silly tree shape here, but for instance, we can use this same kind of gradient technique to create a spherical shape. So I'm going to grab my ellipse tool here, hold down shift while I sort of maybe start right here in the middle and just alt-shift outwards. Make sure this is centered as best I can here. I'm going to change my gradient from linear to radial, and I'm going to change my lighter color to, say, for instance, a light green, and my darker color to a dark green. And what we'll do here is we'll grab our gradient tool over here. You click on the gradient tool. You may or may not see a little line form here, but what you can do is you can just click and drag where you want the center of your gradient to be. So I want it to be sort of closer to the side over here. So I'm going to grab I'm going to click and drag, and so now we have this little sort of shiny side on the top of our tree here. And we can obviously, like, make it closer to the top, a little more extreme like that. I think that's about good, right about there. Okay, good. Neato. All right, so there we go. We've got some round shapes that we used to create our isometric grid here. Let's make sure we save this file, save it to something different here. Save it as like isometric round. And let's put our last name there as well. And then when we export this, we're going to go to File, Export for Screens, and call it isometric round. Export artboard. Cool, so let's take a look at this. There it is. Very cool. So submit this as a JPEG to your Dropbox, and I cannot wait to see you guys produce. Obviously, the colors are all up to you, so happy designing. See you in class.